Do you talk?
Hey Nick, what's up? What's up? What's up? Our friend Nick Chamberas with us, and he is in a very nice place right now, geographically, but his heart is and his brain is both are occupied with what's going on in the United States. Nick, how are you doing these days?
I'm great. How are you, Yuri? It's good to be back on.
I'm here, and we just the things we need to discuss, but we won't discuss is on air for our viewers is just amazing. But we're good. We're good, thank God, and we're trying to to remind the city that our son of our land of New York City is now in the White House, and fill everybody with pride and joy on this occasion. And I'm not talking about the detergents that are used in like dishwasher detergents. It's real pride and real joy that people should experience, and so we're tirelessly reminding everybody to remember this fact. And you are publishing your pieces on Newsmax quite regularly. And the last one that you did, the recent one, was about this cobweb of Fauci, right? Unless you publish something after that.
I've talked about Fauci. I've talked about tariffs, the reaction to tariffs. We can certainly talk about Fauci. The more information that comes out, and I think a lot of the decision makers prior to this Trump administration were confident that this information would never see the light of day. But the more information we're getting, the more you understand why Dr. Fauci was given a 10-year pardon, essentially. One of the worst, most dangerous public servants ever in the history of the United States. The damage he did is immeasurable. And I think it's safe to say that the lab leak originated from Wuhan, and much of this, if not a direct consequence, COVID was created because Fauci funded it. And there were explicit instructions going back to the first Obama administration not to fund gain-of-function research. And it was clear how dangerous this type of research was because it was unchecked, it was uncontrollable, and then we realized what happened once there was a leak, a worldwide pandemic, a worldwide catastrophe. And it's clear now that, unfortunately, Dr. Fauci lied to Congress about his involvement. He lied to Congress about suppressing emails and blocking the circulation of very well respected studies that showed the origin of the virus. He prevented life-saving, very cost-effective medications from being distributed globally while waiting for a vaccine. I'm not going to...
Which turned out not to be a vaccine per se, right? It's...
Well... nothing funny about it.
$8 billion later, right?
$8 billion later, limited efficiency, effectiveness, countless side effects, some of them suspected to be very serious. And what was all this for, essentially? We've got to ask that question. So, this was someone who was a much better bureaucrat than he was ever a doctor or a scientist. He was great at navigating the DC political scene, not just among Democrats, but among Republicans for decades. And really, I mean, you see what happens when a bureaucrat like this just has unchecked authority. And we need to work. I understand people are very frustrated. They're very angry. I have a keen understanding of this, of how lives were uprooted, some of the lives almost destroyed, financially, socially, with family, a combination of things. And, people they fantasize about these people being perp walked and arrested and exposed. And you're not going to get any protesting out of me. But I think what we really should focus on, what's very important, and I'm going to have some things coming out down the line about this, is in the short term and long term future. We've got to make sure that these Fauci lockdowns and shutdowns, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but again, these mandates for experimental medicines can never happen again. The scary part is, Yuri, that most people in this country don't understand how close we are, how easy it is for the lockdowns to come back the next time we have some kind of outbreak of any kind of virus or disease, infectious disease. We're really not that insulated or protected again. There are people, bizarre, strange people, dreaming of forcing people to double mask again. And if you want a triple mask, quadruple mask, it is your right, as long as it's not in the commission of a crime. But you want to go and wear an oxygen mask outside, go forth, protect, God bless you and protect you. But there are people who dream of, again, instituting those policies, restricting people's movement, restricting people's options. And it's daunting how big of a role Fauci played with all of this. Looking back, they had to whip us into a frenzy for us to accept all of these measures on a global scale. There's just too much that it's almost as if there was a plan in place. Now, I'm not one of those people who says that this was deliberate. I don't think it was deliberate, but it should make us all frightened how this was the pretense to basically limit democracy in the most meaningful way since World War II. Since a long time, maybe longer than that. So yes, I think it's, I actually told a few people at Newsmax that I'm actually very happy that Dr. Fauci was given a pardon. Before you think I fell or something or lost my mind, just let me explain. If Dr. Fauci wasn't given a pardon, and if some jurisdiction prosecuted him, he would be martyred by the mainstream media, probably. It would drag on for years and years and nothing would happen. I think the preemptive pardon tells us all we need to know. When's the last time you can ever remember someone of that stature having to be given a 10-year pardon for their activities in the government? Never. So for all the people who try to sanctify Dr. Fauci, regard him as a saint on earth, and basically blasted us from asking questions, from inquiries, from scientific inquiry, I think it answers the question. No one who's innocent, who's not culpable, would get that kind of sweeping pardon. But the more you dig into this, the more you realize that Dr. Fauci was involved with some very dangerous individuals, some possibly mentally stable individuals, and the American people in the world suffered as a result.
10 years can go like this. And if you follow the Doge findings, people in the United States live like 150 to see. So 10 years, it's nothing. It will be over. So next generation, if they won't be given a tablet to eliminate, a pill to eliminate the memory, they would see the process. But humor aside, or attempted humor aside, somebody risked a lot. Dr. Fauci's risk was not, to pull this all off, and say China risked, Peter Daszak risked this Eco Alliance arm of that was actually the implementation part of this project. So Dr. Fauci gave they gave the money to the Eco Alliance, Peter Daszak. Peter Daszak dealt with Wuhan lab, and then it kind of escaped, and immediately the cover-up has begun, and cover-up has been at this point removed, and recognized that it was the lab that was involved. So Donald Trump was right. What it says here.
Not enough, though.
White on
It's
red.
not enough to be right. It's not enough to be right.
Few questions remain, of course. One was why Dr. Fauci wasn't jailed in 2020. Why wasn't he investigated in 2020? And of course, everybody was scared, and he still had the authority. He still had some reputation as a doctor. Who wants to argue with the doctor? If the doctor says you're sick, you don't want to argue with him.
Well, some people they question why President Trump didn't remove Dr. Fauci sooner. Hindsight is 2020. I think President Trump, although again, and if we look at it retrospectively, yeah, I mean, if we had that information back then, Fauci should have been sent packing immediately. At the time, President Trump was faced with world leaders calling him and telling him this is the end, basically. Dr. Fauci had his critics, but at the time he had a lot of support, not just among Democrats, but among Republicans as well. And had he removed him then, without the smoking gun, so to speak, there would have been an uproar. I'll remind everyone that this man, Dr. Fauci, decided to take the unprecedented step and insert himself in the 2020 election, basically giving an endorsement to President Biden, I think a week before the election or a few weeks before the election, by saying, oh, President Trump cares about the politics of this, but Joe Biden wants to cure it. And I thought that was outrageous, considering Dr. Fauci's policies harmed millions of people across the world. President Trump couldn't have removed him then. There would have been an uproar that would have eclipsed everything else that the president was trying to do. Again, had we the information and the political capital, yes, he should have been sent packing for lying repeatedly. First, he told us not to buy masks. Then he told us we needed to triple mask, basically. Just making it up as he went along. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah. President Trump, he handled it. He listened to the experts. He listened to the doctors. That's what a president's supposed to do. That's what a leader's supposed to do. How could anybody, even New York veterans of industry, titans of industry, who've seen and heard it all, who would have ever imagined, Yuri, that this guy was not only responsible for the leak, but was basically orchestrating, organizing, and engineering the information to be presented to the president in a way that wasn't representative of what was actually happening, but in a way so that they could implement their insane, agoraphobic agenda of getting everybody locked down. I don't think the most paranoid human being in the world could have imagined what was going on, which was that Dr. Fauci was grossly misleading. They were lying to him. Let's not mince words. They were lying to the president and his advisors.
The more I look at it, the more I listen to you, the more I think about it myself. I think that Dr. Fauci was a point man. He was the acting arm of this conspiracy. I have to say the C word, right? The conspiracy, because who benefit? Cui bono, cui prodis, as they say. That's obvious. And say the whole story about the warp speed Trump vaccine. It was really a feat of superior reaction, very nimble, very kind of urgent, and of course someone was ready to provide this. I don't remember who was that. Was it Pfizer who came up with the first vaccine that was provided in record time? But they knew something, or they sold something that was from the previous, of course, epidemics, not pandemics, but they really kind of pulled wool over the eyes of American public, American government. All of them did. Dr. Fauci, the press. Don't forget about the press. I'm looking at the piece here. 100 days of Donald Trump, and first term, second term, and then Biden. Biden's was press coverage was 59% positive, almost 60%. First term Trump, 89% negative. Second term, 100 days, 92% negative. Main Street, 92% negative. So the idea was to end Trump and then rub him into the dirt and never put like asphalt over him, and that's it. End of it. Don't think about it ever again.
And
So
it continues.
it continues, but he prevailed. I must say, they were seriously damaged, and you see now the it's ridiculous. This doctored interview Kamala Harris gave to CBS. Remember when they trimmed her answers so they would make sense, kind of, and be related? Now it's received an Emmy nomination.
Yes.
Interview in the center of a lawsuit, $20 million lawsuit, I think, right?
Well, look, those
Or
New York,
billion. I get confused nowadays.
those New York Times articles won Pulitzers too about Spygate, and they were basically made up whole cloth. You know, college kids, having drinking all night and partying, come up with less fantastical things than what the New York Times wrote about. Miranda Devine, for example, did outstanding work for the New York Post on several fronts covering the Biden administration, and she was ignored. But the Times, basically,
right?
yeah. But the New York Times, they just wrote stuff that was made up, and they won Pulitzers, and so did some other outlets. It's a shame. I'm not minimizing it. I'm not happy about it, but we cannot lose sight of our goals. That's the point. We have to keep fighting. These things can tend to distract us very much.
You gotta say it 3 times. Fight, fight, fight. That's
fight,
it.
fight. But fight isn't just in. But unfortunately, too many people in the base, too many Donald Trump supporters think fight happens every 4 years. Fight happens every year in the local elections and state elections and federal elections. That's the issue we have. We can get a million excuses about why we lost that Wisconsin judge race, but that losing that race in Wisconsin is going to be devastating. Hopefully not, but could be devastating for our congressional majority. Too many Republicans, and I understand when you're being beaten down, when you've gone through the disaster of the Obama years and of the official Obama years, and then you just had the third unofficial Obama administration. It's very hard when you're working multiple jobs, when you're basically besieged financially because of the disastrous policies of the Biden Obama administrations. It's, you're raising a family, you're struggling to make ends meet. It's very hard to focus on these things and make sure that you get yourself out to vote and your friends out to vote. But as much as we're winning, and we're winning a lot, the president has done an amazing job. He defied even my expectations, which I've articulated clearly on your shows and others as well. But all of this is tenuous. We're passing everything through executive, for the most part. Most of the things are being passed through executive order. And we need to understand that it's not that the Democrats have some secret, amazing plan to stop Donald Trump. We know their plan. We see it coming from 100 miles away.
Yeah.
However, what we don't want to admit is that it just might work. Not to stop him. You're not going to stop President Trump, but they're trying to delay his administration's goals. They're trying to block as much as possible, drag this out. So we already know what the plan is. The goal is to take Congress back in 2026. They know that during an off-season election, there's not going to be as much Republican turnout in any state, in any area. They know that the Democrats are going to be fired up because, unfortunately, they continue to get their information from mainstream media, which is a shadow of its former self in terms of integrity and objectivity. They get their information from there, and they know what they're going to do.
Yeah, but the secret weapon, this magic word, intersectionality, is now has suffered a number of blows. One of them being the older Democrats. They don't like the younger Democrats to such an extent for their extremism. Ocasio-Cortez versus Chuck Schumer. It's not that obvious who's going to win, because a lot of people still consider them pillars of Democrat. Chuck Schumer is a pillar of New York and the image of Democrat Party. And the younger Democrats, they became ultra lefties now. They all go with Hamas and such, and they go with the transgender, etc., LGBTQ, etc. politics. And it's seriously fragmented. I'm not saying Republican Party is in the tip-top shape, but still we have like maybe three parts to our party, but the Democrats, they have much more disagreement within.
They have disagreement. They have a lot of disagreement within, but there's much unity within. Do you really think that Chuck Schumer, if he had a Democrat president, would ever permit these kinds of bills, for example, that Rand Paul trying to stop the president's tariff policy to go on? Absolutely not. The Democrats, yes, they're fractured, but when it comes to winning elections, they're united. They're going to stay that way. And that's what we have to worry about. Let me tell you, as much as obviously there are serious differences within the Chuck Schumer wing of the Democratic Party, or his vision and ideology, and AOC's vision and ideology for where she wants to see the Democratic Party go in New York and nationally, when it comes to the election, know two things. Whoever is the Democrat candidate, the Democrats will unify and vote in droves. Second thing, they will do, regardless of their inter-party differences, they will do whatever it takes to stop President Trump. They will be united on that. They will fight amongst themselves in the back rooms, in the channels. Yes, they will never try to make serious efforts to undermine their leader's agenda. That's what's happening in the Republican Party.
But they'll have to trade their leaders for, that's how it goes. The negotiation, what do they have? We go with Chuck, but you give us this and this and this. There is a machine that does all that the Republicans can do: ballot harvesting, ballot counting, adjudication. It's all kind of in place and regulated, and the resistance is fierce to the photo IDs or registration with the proof of citizenship for voting. So there are some things that they are trying to kind of take care of as early as possible in the elections process. But I'm saying that it's not a smooth sailing as such a smooth sailing as it kind of was in 20 elections in the year 2020. Which Trump won, by the way.
So you make a lot of excellent points, and there's much to ponder in that. But my view is the Democrats are always playing chess, and most of us are playing checkers. they had plans for Trump winning. All these injunctions, these judicial injunctions, are not a coincidence. They're unprecedented if you think about it. Never in our history. And I'm not saying they're invalid, because we have some grifters on our end. We have some of these just crazies trying to monetize everything and distort the information. They're not illegal. People on these pages, I try to explain. And Yuri, you know me, you've read my content, you know where I stand on illegal immigration. But we have to deal in information. And you have to understand, the Democrats had prepared this. They knew exactly what they would do to stop President Trump. They know what they're doing now. They know what they're doing next week. They know what they're doing next month. Their objective is delay as much as possible. It's so hard to get anything passed in the House. Let's recognize that. We have a tenuous majority. It's hard to get stuff passed. I mean, Speaker Johnson, for all his talents and strengths, and there are many, when he had that disagreement with Congresswoman Luna about voting from home, Congress shut down for a week. The Democrats, again, this never would have happened under a Democratic majority. Not necessarily a bad thing. Look, we're not wannabe totalitarian communists. We're all individuals. They're all individuals representing their districts and constituents, and they want to hash things out. However, they know that basically they just have to delay, keep the president from deporting many people. And look, the border, the administration has done an awesome job at the border. Almost no one is getting through. We can't ignore the fact and party that, yes, okay, no one's coming through. We just have 20 million people in the last 4 years who came to our country. Where are they going? For the most part, let's be candid, they're going nowhere. They're going to stay here. We're not on track to get these people out. No way. And we can scream and say whatever we want. But the fact is, the sanctuary cities, unfortunately, are working. They're having a huge impact on ICE's ability to enforce the immigration law. And the Democrats know, look, this is the plan. They file all these lawsuits. They're going to use the same. You remember that? I even hate to use the word. It triggers me, and not in a good way. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm just anticipating the word. The QAnon. Sure.
Yeah, QAnon. I don't have evidence of this. This is my extrapolation. QAnon was created by some very smart Democrat strategists to get Republicans to stay home.
I think the CIA it was done, or in some of the 17 agencies.
I have no idea who did it.
Regular Democrat is not capable. Even Norm Eisen is not capable of inventing stuff like that.
regular, whoever it was brilliant, because it got a lot of Republicans, it got a lot of Trump supporters to stay home. And you're going to see a lot of misinformation on the social media boards and everything else now. You're going to see, you're going to tell people how it's over. Trump won. Trump did this. Trump did that. Stay home, basically, implicitly. Stay home. Don't vote.
Thank you for your skepticism. Thank you so much. That's what we need, right? Good thing I have my cap on.
I'm not someone complaining without offering solutions. I can talk. I've made it clear what we need to do to counter this. But just to finish up on what their plan is, and then if you like, I can tell you what we have to do. They're going to bombard the president in the courts. And I am very disappointed that they've stooped to this point where they're trying to issue injunctions about ICE detaining people at the border, which is ridiculous. But my advice is tone down the rhetoric against the judges. It's not something that's going to help implement the administration's goals. It's just not.
I'm afraid it's not the tactics, not the strategy of the White House. They amplify everything and they fight back.
you need to. The administration has done a great job legally. They've been very innovative in trying to bypass these bureaucratic and legal hurdles. I'm referring to people being told that we've won the immigration battle. We have not won the immigration battle. We're not on pace to deport nearly as many people as we should. Violent, dangerous people. We're just not.
Should go hand in glove with the legal immigration changes in legal immigration, and show people on practically how it goes with people who decide to immigrate legally. And this is not the same thing as trekking over Mexico or Darien Pass and stuff like that, risking your life, dragging your kids, being within the same company with plenty of undesirables. I hate to use this word because I came from the liberté, égalité, fraternité area of the world, but normal, exactly, being Uzbekistan, but the socialist nevertheless. So, but they're undesirables in the same company: the cartel members, the drug traffickers, the people traffickers, stuff like that. And just to show them that would be a positive thing, because nobody's opposed to legal immigration, controlled, and on the need basis. We need this kind of people and that kind of people, and they're in all fields. Not all of them are like next NIH heads of the National Institute of Health that we would need soon, or somebody else. Programmers. We also need people who, yes, they mow the lawns and they cook in the kitchen, and they came here legally, and they pay flat tax like everybody else. I think that would be also a welcome development.
Well, I'm glad you raised the example, because let's do a compare and contrast the tale of two immigrants, one legal immigrant, one illegal immigrant. These are true examples. I'll start with the legal immigrant, a really good friend of mine from Brighton Beach. I'll even use his actual name. His name is Lev, but there's so many Levs. He immigrated here with his family legally, did not speak
a word.
English.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. The man worked 3 jobs. And one of the nicest, look, this is why I take exception with, all about this. We need to bring the best with H-1B visas. And he did actually have an engineering degree, if I remember correctly. But he didn't work in engineering. He worked in some service jobs. He worked so hard. It was a pleasure getting to know him and see his English improve. And look, he went through some hard times. Let me tell you, if being an immigrant in the United States, it's a lot easier now than 20 or 30 years ago, especially if you didn't speak the language, no matter where you were. And he put his wife through school. She became an accountant. And his daughter became a nurse. American dream. Worked really hard. He still works very hard. But it was not easy for him. I don't think the man has even jaywalked. I would actually be shocked if this kind of person even jaywalked. He was one of those, he would follow the, model citizen, basically. Did it the right way. Nobody's ever heard of him, and you understand why. Now, this Abrego Garcia from Maryland, I do understand why people on the right, it's like they're just enraged, because you have this guy, they talk about, immigrants, illegal aliens are entitled to due process, which is correct. Yes, they are. Some people on the right, particularly social media influencers and rage peddlers, have attacked me harshly for pointing this out. But we gain nothing by lying to people, extorting information, believing or sharing misinformation. The Supreme Court has ruled in 3 different cases that illegal aliens have procedural rights under the United States Constitution. I know a lot of people are not happy about it. I know a lot of people, they go online and they offer their own interpretation of the Constitution, which is great. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. We have freedom of speech. But the issue is no one can go into court and offer those interpretations because they'd be laughed out of court. You can say, oh, illegal aliens have no rights under the Constitution. Yes, they do. And I'm not happy about it, but it's something that we have to deal with. Now, you look at Abrego Garcia, a standing deportation order. He did receive his due process. He did receive his day in court. He was caught smuggling 8 people into the country who didn't speak a word of English. They had no luggage.
Toothbrush and $300 in the pocket.
Yeah. He was, according to informants, a member of MS-13. According to the government of El Salvador, he was a member of MS-13. The ex-husband of his wife demanded custody of his children, claiming that Abrego Garcia was a gang member. He beat his wife, according to his wife, he beat her viciously twice. We've lost our minds when people, not just politicians and social media influencers, but people in your neighborhoods, when they're going online or when they're going into a cafe and they're presenting this person as some model family man who was plucked out of his calm life and deported to the wrong country. It's absurd, but we're having to take time away from that, unfortunately. And something even more dangerous, and it's why we have to be careful and why we have to fight, like you said, but we have to fight smart. We can't take the bait. We can't be distracted. So I would not deign to try to understand what a Jewish person who had family victims of the Holocaust goes through. I can't pretend to identify with that or ever fully grasp what that means. You see the horrors of Auschwitz.
And we have a reminder of that in the form of October 7th.
Yes, absolutely. And you one of the books that I read that really influenced my life and just made me understand the consequences of hatred, of irrational hatred, was The Diary of Anne Frank. And to see these idiots, and I could use far harsher language, maybe I should, but I won't.
Because you're not a member of the Democrat Party. They are cursing the ones.
It's disgusting. Anybody who compares President Trump's immigration policy, which is basically enforcing the law, to what happened to Anne Frank and her family, is a disgusting human being. At best, they're just a moron. But, if they're not a custody of the state, they're just an absolutely disgusting human being. And you see that all over the place. These people have no idea. They're comparing Auschwitz, Anne Frank to a gangbanger. They've lost their minds. But I'm telling you, Yuri, there's a plan behind all of this. Right. They know that if they distract Republicans just enough, if they disappoint them just enough, too many voters think that things are going to be happening overnight and things are going to be changing. These executive orders obviously are not permanent. They're very temporary. Democrats are going to be well funded for the 2026 congressional elections. They've corrected a lot of the mistakes they made with their get out the vote operations in the last election. And they know full well that a lot of Republicans are not going to show up. So what are they hoping to do? They're hoping to take back the Senate, which I think is thankfully it won't happen. But they're hoping to take Congress, and immediately, once they get control of the House, if they get control of the House, the impeachment will start. And forgive me, but you can't get more, it's going to be really hard to get more ridiculous than impeaching President Trump over the phone call to Ukraine, but that actually happened. So we're going to be dealing with impeachment all over again. And kudos to President Trump. I mean, he handled 2 impeachments and consequential.
I have a problem with the sound. Nick, you hear me? Nick, yeah, Nick, we're here.
Yeah. So it upended NAFTA. Thank God it replaced and repealed NAFTA in the middle of the impeachment nonsense. So they're going to they're hoping to get the House. They're going to obstruct, impede, try to impeach again. And then in 2028, they're going to say, well, somebody else has to run. We can steamroll this person. There's very few people. There'll never be another President Trump, one way or the other. There'll never be anyone like President Trump in the Republican or Democrat Party. He was the only one. He was the right man, the right person for our time, for a time such as this. There'll never be anyone like that again. We don't know if whoever is the nominee in 2028 is going to withstand all of these organized attacks. We just don't know that. So they're rolling the dice that just a few more years, they can undo what President Trump has done. What we have to do in the Republican Party is twofold. We need to improve our fundraising drastically. Even anywhere from federal races to races for dog catcher, in a manner of speaking.
You know, the difference between us and Democrats, they have this setup of the non-governmental organizations that were getting rich on taxpayers' money. And this is what they poured into it's not all the rich people like Reid Hoffman or other donors who gave millions to Democrats. It's just also their channeling of the taxpayers' money and pouring into their operation. And the Republicans, for a number of reasons, they're not ready to do this. So
we don't have to do this.
Close all those channels to remove all those NGOs. Now I see that there's a refresh on the New York Times of today, and they say that Trump is looking to eliminate the National Endowment for the Arts, which is a major propaganda machine too. And for funding for the,
but we don't. All of that will help. The problem is that too many viable Republican candidates, congressional candidates across the country, don't have the funds, because the way the financial infrastructure is set up, you have a very small group of people directing where the money is going to go to, and when that happens, it basically means there are no surprises. Did you ever hear of Dan Rostenkowski?
No.
Very powerful Illinois congressman. I think he was, he actually lost in the '94 revolution to a no-name.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is the no-name, my goodness, I forget the man's name, the Republican who beat Congressman Rostenkowski. But the National Committee did some polling. No, some outside group did some polling. And at the time, the chairman of the RNC, I believe, was Haley Barbour. And they sent him the polling. And it looked like Rostenkowski was going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So the GOP quietly put money into that race, and they won. There are at least 5 seats across the country that nobody thinks we could win, but Republicans can definitely make some ground up if we funded them. But Republicans have to do a better job of recruiting candidates. We can't just get loudmouth caricatures. Some of them are cosplaying extreme right-wing candidates. We can't have them in high-profile races anymore. We need to recruit serious people. We need to recruit people who will go out there and campaign, no matter the district. And we have to have ways for them to raise money. I don't want to name names, but I'm thinking of two races, one in Mississippi, one in Alabama, 2024. Those candidates came within 5 points of winning, and they barely raised a nickel because they couldn't. They were ignored. So Speaker Johnson's going to have to be more aggressive. He's going to have to get involved. No one wants to pick winners and losers. The problem is that it seems the establishment gets very heavy-handed in promoting the losers and pushing away rational, intelligent, appealing candidates who would do some damage, who would make some noise and give the Democrats a fight. So we have to make sure that this time around we're recruiting the best candidates to run, that we're not giving up any races, that I don't care if you want to run in a plus 60 blue district. If you want support, if you want the nod, you have to be someone willing to put in the work, not just get your name there so you can send some emails. Look at New York. We lost do you know how many? We lost 4 congressional seats in 2024. Were any of them blowouts? No. We lost the Santos seat in a special election, and I've spoken about this. The method by which they selected a candidate was very curious. We lost that election in a blowout. But guess what? In the November election, Suozzi only won by 4 points. And no one had that as a potential pickup. We didn't fund the Republican. We lost another seat on Long Island. People were projecting we would lose it by 10 points. We lost it by 2 points. Yes, you're right.
No, I'm just boiling inside. It's bubbling up. I'm just saying the Republicans don't care to become interesting. They don't want to attract people outside of regular 20 people like we have in Brooklyn GOP gatherings. 20 people come, same people all the time. Once in a blue moon, somebody comes who I don't know. But I stopped going there, frankly. It's not interesting. You can have events. We're going to have events. I am setting up events where people come of Republican persuasion with no party activity so far, and they may find somebody and say, listen, this is your time to shine. Go, present yourself, run for office. Because that's also a problem. People need to step out of the shadows and understand that if you do politics right, it's not boring, it's not disgusting, and you not always end up in jail, although this is a possible outcome.
Look, we've spoken about this offline, that if I start talking about New York City GOP politics and New York State GOP politics, one, within a couple of minutes, I would sound like a raving lunatic, and I don't think that helps anyone. And two, I would need hours and hours and hours. But let me just say a couple of things since you brought it up, and I can't resist the temptation to talk about this. A long time ago, under a different regime in the Brooklyn GOP, there was someone who, this is not official, but there was someone who was allowed to run, supposedly, allegedly, I don't have concrete proof of this, but there was someone who was allowed to run against an incumbent Democrat because there was some sort of a backroom deal not to contest the seat a lot. So let the Democrat have it, right? Well, this person took this opportunity and ran with it. I mean, they did everything that the hacks tell you not to do. I've been in meetings where they're actually telling not naming anybody specifically, where people are being told by some others throughout New York City and state, not referring to anyone specifically, do not take any guesses, but they're being told, don't raise money, don't worry about it. They're being told all this nonsense. Anyway, this person raised money, raised almost as much as the incumbent did. And this was not somebody who liked raising money. They went at it. They debated the person. They debated this person anywhere they would show up. They prepared. They did their homework. And they won. And they won big time. And they went on to a lot of good things. Another thing, as far as the Brooklyn GOP, 10 years ago, there was a time where we had 5 seats, and the map was much harder for Republicans back then. The redistricting of 2020 made Brooklyn a lot more amenable to Republicans picking up seats. But there was a chairman, and I don't want to go into the painful and stuff, but things weren't always like this. Yes, we fought amongst each other. Yes, even among the chairman at that time, 10 years ago, there were some people advising him that I didn't particularly care for. But we all had the same purpose, which was winning. And we had a lot of events back then, a lot of nice events. And now, things have changed. Times change, people change. You can't always have the same leaders in there. But that's what you're talking about, that we need more people involved, not less people.
Yeah. Marty Golden, say all you want about Marty Golden, but he would bring, so some summer event, he would bring some jazz band to Marine Park here, and people would gather, and he would come out, and he would say, I'm bringing it to you. It's my honor to show you this. I'm your representative, blah, blah, blah. Same thing was done by Democrats on a larger scale on Brighton Beach. There used to be performances at the Asher Levy Park. There is a band shell, and big names would come. Donna Summer would come. Natalie Cole would come. Somebody else quite famous used to come. Then there were free concerts that are no more on the boardwalk, and the Chicago band would come, and a lot of names would come, and I learned a lot of things. Who would show me how to buy binoculars where you can use one as a flask, secret flask. You can go to concert. You bring your own binoculars. Nothing wrong with that. Half of it is a flask, and that's what I'm talking about. Just to make Republicans a fun kind of brand name to look at the entertainment value outside of everything else.
Marty Golden is among the most respected former state senators in New York State. Actually, one of the most accomplished. He lost. I don't want to call it a fluke. His loss was devastating. Had devastating consequences for Southern Brooklyn, but his departure was basically the perfect storm, because the people who were at the helm of that campaign, I don't like criticizing other operations or operatives, but it took a perfect storm for Marty to lose. But when you don't have true believers in the party, and we need more true believers right now, active, this is what happens. You lose races, you bring in rhinos, you bring in grifters, and I just encourage everyone to get involved. You don't need to be part of some official organization in Brooklyn, Queens, Syracuse, wherever. Utica. Look, the way to go about this, not just in New York, but all over the country, is you get involved, you get informed, you get active, you get other people involved. And it's not just social media. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Some people like to talk face to face. That means, sir, madam, get on social media too. Some people just stay on Facebook all day in the groups and, rage post. Fine. Get out there. Talk to your neighbors. Like I've said before, this was not done. The November election was not the happy ending. It was a to be continued. We have to continue getting new voters, getting old voters, getting people who just don't like to vote, getting them out to the polls. And in Brooklyn in particular, the more normal people that get involved, whoever they support, the better. Just we need more people involved. We need more organizations, not some clandestine small group. Some people might love that. The point is, you need to grow the parties. You need to grow the enrollments, and it's possible. And you've done an amazing job. I wish we could clone you. You've gone at it, but we need more people. And that's the issue.
I know. We're working on the next event. Let me make an announcement in Russian. Дорогие друзья, я хочу вам сказать, во-первых, когда вы дойдете до этой точки в видео, вы можете, с самого начала я об этом не сказал, но если кто-то включился позже, можно включить субтитры, услышать перевод на русский язык. 70%, я думаю, будет соответствовать тому, о чем мы здесь действительно говорили, если это необходимо. Я приветствую всех тех, кто слушал это по-английски, наших обычных слушателей, и всех тех, кто будет слушать это впоследствии на английском, в оригинале. Новые люди, я надеюсь, тоже придут сюда. Второе, что я хочу вам сказать, это то, что Юра Табах будет в Бруклине. Вчера мы с ним созвонились, он наконец вернулся сюда, на родную землю, и мы организовываем в конце мая, начале июня, скорее всего, это произойдет, наша встреча с ним здесь, в Бруклине, он приедет. Я прошу вас присылать ваши пожелания, присылать ваши идеи, говорить, мы придем, сколько нас будет. Давайте мне все это. Мы, наверное, в этот раз как-то организуем. Скорее всего, будет минимальная стоимость доступа для того, чтобы оплатить аренду театра. Театру тоже нужны деньги, где мы это будем проводить. Наши друзья, тем не менее, мы хотим их поддержать, поэтому вот такое распределение, только они получат деньги за то, что приготовят все и будут с нами, и потом будут все это убирать и возвращаться к своей обычной деятельности. Это мы все очень любим. So I'm done here. Nick, I have a bunch of questions. What's your opinion? How Europe sees the Canada elections and what's going to happen between Russia and Ukraine? I want to know your opinion about Tucker Carlson. If you follow this character, this commentator, this political pundit. Now you can say, right? But if you have a moment, pick one.
You're again. I'm sorry that I was tempted with the local stuff because
No. It's very important. It's vital. It's important for people.
When I was out of college and I came back home basically, and I never thought I'd get involved in local politics, but I did. And you'd have people that would tell you all these stories, and I was always interested in the history, right? And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm like the same guy that would, those people who were telling me the stories, now I've turned into them. I can just tell you a lot of stories. As far as, let's take Tucker Carlson first.
Yeah.
So Tucker Carlson reminds me of the late former very accomplished Mayor Ed Koch said. He said, if you agree with me 7 out of times, make sure you vote for me. If you agree with me 10 out of 10 times, see a psychiatrist. I have a lot of respect for Tucker Carlson, one of the brightest minds in the country, really smart guy. I took enormous exception. I don't think we discussed this, but I took enormous exception with him and Joe Rogan asking questions about 9/11, which is absolutely ridiculous. 9/11 conspiracy theories are insane. They've been debunked. Sadly, we know exactly what happened and who was responsible for 9/11. So I was a little concerned when they started asking questions about 9/11. A lot of things, though, if you don't look into it, some theories may be alluring. Like, I don't know if you've heard about how they were talking about how steel doesn't melt. And
Yeah,
yes,
that's Rosie O'Donnell's territory.
so yes, steel doesn't melt, but it can lose 90% of its strength in 2000-degree temperatures, right? And I actually linked it in one of my columns. This steel worker, this iron worker, he put a great video demonstrating what happens to steel and the structure when you heat those. Yeah, you didn't break the steel, but he showed exactly what happens. Anyway, I was a little concerned
Well,
then.
there's also structural integrity, and it could be like the strongest thing in the world, but if it's not, it's losing your. It's not one piece. There are many
Right,
millions
right,
of
right.
pieces that constitute a tower. So one is failing, two is failing, three is failing, fifth, 10th failing. That's the building is gone.
Right. So now on Iran, I'm assuming you want to talk about Iran with Tucker Carlson and what he said.
No,
Um,
our community was triggered by his interview with Stephen Witkoff, who basically praised Putin all the way through, etc., etc. And my read on that was that he is just one of the ways now the countries communicate with each other totally openly, because they have no the diplomatic machine is broken. So they needed to show that Tucker Carlson is the man who Putin is listening to, or at least being reported about. So Vitkov had to say and prove his goodwill to someone who would kind of be picked up on Kremlin's
yeah.
radar. And basically, it goes like people are talking. Thank you very much. No, thank you very much. No, thank you very much.
Oh
This
boy.
is how was the
Right.
why Trump was echoing Putin's arguments, because he cannot trust his own apparatus at this point yet. Maybe it
So
will.
I think we should remember a lot of people try to, and I'm not saying that they specifically, but it's been shown in the past, a lot of people like to present their influence over the president. And more than any president in recent memory, President Trump has a very small inner circle. He has a lot of acquaintances, a lot of friends, a lot of people who, seem to post nonstop about their so-called proximity to him. But Tucker Carlson, yes, he seems as of late to basically be not just pushing America first, but America isolationist, and ignoring the fact that Ukraine was invaded. This
Yeah.
didn't happen because they had some disagreement on oil rights or whatever. This was a physical incursion which can't possibly help the United States to encourage. And yes, America first, but we're the leader of the free world. And as someone who obviously supports the president's tariff policies and real trade policies, I'm also cognizant of the fact that economies now are interconnected. The world looks for us to lead. We need to focus on America first, on America's interests, but that doesn't mean that we put ourselves in a bubble and close our eyes to the injustices going on across the world, and that we abandon our friends and allies. Tucker Carlson, in this, and his seemingly, and it's regrettable what he basically said, that just let Iran get nuclear weapons. If you take his word for it, if you take what he says at face value, just let Iran get nuclear weapons. That's one of the most insane things I've ever heard. I didn't take the Russia stuff seriously only because I have full confidence that President Trump understands that there needs to be long-term security for Ukraine. There will never be peace unless there's an agreement that provides for peace, security, and stability in Ukraine. Otherwise, the war will go on. It doesn't matter. There can be attacks on leaders, Zelensky and Putin, but the bottom line is the key to this, to ending this war, is to provide for the long-term stability and safety of Ukraine. Anything else is window dressing. I would be shocked if President Trump doesn't understand that. The rhetoric aside, look, he may have some concessions in mind that not everyone likes, but let me be, in my view, again, I don't want to misrepresent myself and be guilty of what I'm criticizing, but I would be shocked if Tucker Carlson is expressing the view of the administration on Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my opinion too, except the administration understands that if you bring someone to Tucker Carlson's show and you need this to be heard in Kremlin, then that's the show that they use. And you used it with Witkoff, whose character was kind of assassinated, basically, when he said that Putin and Russia and great this and great that. But again, people know very little about diplomacy, and a lot of people think they don't want the war, but they want the power demonstration. And when you deal with someone who can respond, France may not respond militarily if the American Navy comes to the shores of like somewhere before Marseille, right? They're there, I assume. De facto, they're there. But Russia is a rabid politically. It's a rabid dog.
I think that,
and there is a way to deal with rabid dogs, but you have to try certain things before that, because the dog is a dog. It's.
I think we should not take too much stock into what Tucker Carlson says particularly about Russia and Ukraine. He has his own opinions. Yes, I'm sure the administration doesn't want to be viewed as antagonizing the Russians. I also think that they want a deal, but I find it very hard to believe that the president is taking his foreign policy advice from Tucker Carlson. Not taking anything away from Mr. Carlson. Literally hundreds of thousands of times more people listen to him than me. But I don't think President Trump or anybody in the cabinet, believe it or not, on this issue. Now, domestic issues, he has a little more clout. I don't think, we know where he stands, right? I don't think the administration is looking at their screens and on the computer and phones and, worried about what Tucker Carlson is going to do. If President Trump sees a deal that will provide for lasting peace for Ukraine and end this war, he will do it, and he's not going to care what anybody says.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I don't know if you saw what he's been saying about Iran. I was actually more frightened about his position on Iran, Tucker Carlson, where he's saying that we shouldn't be hitting the Houthis, and why should we be worried that the regime that has tried to murder our president on multiple occasions, as well as other American diplomats and office holders, and is probably the world's foremost sponsor of terrorism, why should we be worried about them getting nuclear weapons? I can't. I don't understand.
I have to think that whatever he said before was scripted for him, and that's let's leave it at that. It's just he's his own man now, and we loved him when he was in the iron gloves of the Murdoch family.
Look, I think a great deal about. I respect Tucker Carlson a lot. I'm a huge fan. He's one of the smartest people on our side, but we're not always going to agree. And yes, sometimes some of the things that he says does provoke a response. Mark Levine from Fox didn't name him explicitly, but he had some very sharp words for people who want the Trump administration to just be an isolationist state. That doesn't work. That's just naive. We can't be. We'll never prosper. Financially, we'll never prosper in peace if we just ignore the world's problems.
Nick, thank you so very much. Sorry, thank you so very much for this conversation. And
thank you, Yuri.
We should do it more often, definitely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me on.
See you all later.